I think what happens for me is that I end up writing about characters that I may not have a physical or a hands-on connection with, but obviously I grew up with the Afghan culture around me. I grew up in an Afghan family, and so my daily life was always infused with an Afghan identity. So being able to write about these characters is not as much of a stretch of the imagination as it might be for someone who didn't have that background. I think what's helped me is that I'm writing my stories with a passion. I'm writing my stories because I really want to tell these stories. They're compelling for me, and in them being compelling for me, I think that's what's enabled me to portray these stories in a compelling way for readers. So I always tell people who are writing to write about something that you feel passionately about, no matter what it is, even if it's science fiction, but that's where we grow the space to be our best versions of our writing selves. So I have done different things in my life. I've done just some different paths, even some simultaneously. The common thread between being a writer, between being a pediatrician, and someone who's interested in the politics of my country and where I live, is that I am moved by the human story. I'm moved by the way a person is affected by the policies around them, by the landscape that they live in, whether it's that they live in a context of war, or if they live in an oppressive regime, or if they're living in a society where they don't have access to health care, or if the health care cost is such a burden on them that it causes a lot of distress. So in each of these capacities, in each of these roles, I have to look at an individual, but I have to understand how that individual is affected by the world around them. And for the question of which of these is most important to me, I don't think that I can say that one is more important to me than another. I have had really invaluable experiences working in the capacity of a physician. It's being privileged to have those moments where I can be present and work with a family and hopefully help that family at their most vulnerable moments when they're worried about their child. That's an experience that I could not take for granted. And then in writing, I get to have these conversations about really important issues, and I've had some amazing interactions with readers who have been moved literally and physically by my books, either to connect with an estranged relative or to go and devote some time abroad and work with refugees. And in the current capacity as a politician, I am now working with people who have never been engaged in the civic process. But we are understanding in the United States that we really have to be engaged. We have to be active. We have to be vocal if we want our policies and our government to reflect our needs. I was inspired to write by the stories that I grew up with, by watching my counterparts, girls who were living in Afghanistan and growing up in Afghanistan, be denied the opportunities that I had because I happened to be born and raised in the United States. So, for example, in 1996, when I had just finished high school and was about to begin my college and university experience, my counterparts in Afghanistan were falling under the control of the Taliban regime, and education was being closed in their faces. So knowing that, I became very acutely aware that there was something that we should be aware of in the United States and abroad, that our policies, global policies, have an impact on us, and our stories are often dictated by forces that are beyond our control, and make sure that we have an awareness of what's happening in other places and other lands so that we can stay connected with each other. I think out of the challenges that the people of Afghanistan are facing, and out of the wars and the destruction and all of the hardships, out of those kinds of situations come stories of heroism, of beauty, of persistence, and triumph. And those are the stories that I think we do need to hear to keep us all inspired and to keep us all aware of the fact that there are still good things that are happening in troubled lands as well. So I think that as peace and security continues to build in Afghanistan, that there will be room for the arts to flourish, there will be space for creativity to flourish, and that people will start to tell those stories partly to inform and partly to work through the pain and heal.